What's up, everyone? Is Epictastic Joshua here, giving you guys a voiceover, long-awaited review for Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon. This is directed by Martin Scorsese, and he also wrote the script, written by Eric Roth, and based on the 2017 non-fiction book of the same name by David Grann. Stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Lily Gladstone, and Robert De Niro. Flower Moon tells the story of a real love crossing paths with unspeakable betrayal as Mollie Burkhart, a member of the Osage Nation, tries to save her community from a spree of murders fueled by oil and greed. So, that's basically the plot synopsis of this massive film. When it comes to Killers of the Flower Moon, I was interested in it. It wasn't in my most anticipated movies. Well, it was in my most anticipated, but just not in the top 5. Because we know what Martin Scorsese is going to do when it comes to his movies, and he has an annoying habit of making his movies over 3.5 hours long. So that was the biggest worry I was going into with this, is that this was going to be a long movie without so much as an intermission. And also, I was interested because this was a story that has never been told before, but at the same time, the subject matter did have me a little off-put. So at first, I was going to initially wait to watch this when it hit streaming. That way I could treat it as a 2-part film like The Irishman. But after being called names and being called a cinema killer for not seeing this in theaters, I decided to go against my decision, against my own rules, and just give this movie a chance, whether this movie was going to do well or not. And having seen this now, despite how I feel, we can talk about Martin Scorsese and his freaking dramas all we want over Marvel and superhero movies, but I don't really care about that. The question I'm here to ask is Killers of the Flower Moon a great film? Yes, this is a very good film. However, this is not a movie I'm going to rewatch all that often, and I don't think this is his best film here, because there are a few issues that does hold this back. So let's go into it and let's talk about this and be civilized and explain why I feel the way I feel against this movie. And easily the biggest praise I can give to this is, whether you have issues with what Scorsese has said, or you hate or appreciate what he's saying about certain other franchises and such, whether you like his films or hate them, the guy is committed. This is a director, he's in his 80s, he's 81 years old, and he's still able to have some competent direction for his age. Usually when you have directors like this at their age, they either have lost it or they probably just don't have it in them anymore. But Scorsese, the way he chooses to tell the story is very personal, but it's also really immense filmmaking on display. This is a $200 million budget, which, to be honest with you, feels more like $50 to $60 million budget film that was supposed to show first on Apple TV Plus, but it's there in theaters, and it made a decent sized profit, but not as much. But the filmmaking is on display here. You can tell that Martin Scorsese, this is a story that he wanted to tell, and you can tell that he wanted to make this his own story. And the fact that he did a lot of research and did a lot of hard work into telling a story like this actually makes it worth a watch. And Martin Scorsese, despite my issues with his movies being too long and me disagreeing with him respectfully on other franchises, I think that Scorsese has everything it takes in him to still make a great film. and that is on display here with his direction. Because his directing here is solid. I think his directing here is great. It's also personal, and it also gets you emotionally invested. Because you're watching the Native Americans in this era having to go through being lied and deceived to. And for some people, that will be a little bit of a problem. But I think how Martin Scorsese is able to handle it actually makes it pretty effective and pretty dramatic. But also to top that off, him and his cinematographer, Rodrigo Prieto, this is a beautiful looking film. It's shot really well. It's very well competently shot. There's some great moments in here that you could just hang in a museum, and I could easily see this getting a nomination for Best Cinematography. And while I have yet to review his other films in his filmography, which I will try and do that next year in 2024, I think his cinematography work is on display here. And Rodrigo Prieto and Martin Scorsese, whenever these guys do cinematography, you know it's going to be something beautiful, it's going to be something competent, and it's going to be something great. And that's the thing I will have to admire Martin Scorsese for, whether I love the movie or I'm in the middle, because there's very few movies of his that I don't care for. But also that here you have some great set design and some great costume designs that has some great moments of the stage true to the era of what this movie takes place in, and it goes for it. It knows exactly what is going for, and it knows exactly what is planned out with. So I think all of that does a phenomenal job into everything that is setting out to go for. It's very well shot. It's very well directed. But the production design and the costume design is what really sells this on being what it is. And the score by the late Robbie Robertson for his final movie musical score is actually really competently haunting, emotional, but also really devastating at points. Robbie Robertson, this is a good way for him to go out. And it's a great score for him to leave a long-lasting legacy behind. But we have to talk about some of these performances. Now, you have so much great talent here. Everyone in this cast is great. Leonardo DiCaprio is having to play a character who is pretty much stupid, and also he knows what he's doing is wrong, but at the same time he loves his wife. And for an actor like him, it could be easily difficult to play something like this, but DiCaprio is able to play earnest with the vulnerability, but also has that Leonardo DiCaprio charm that you like. He's not the most likable character, and he knows what he's doing is wrong, but at the same time, you can't help but admire Leonardo's performance as Mollie Burkhart. Robert De Niro, this man is 80 years old, and he's still over here acting his ass off. Whether the movie is terrible, or is great, or is just mid, De Niro will commit a performance. He's been around for multiple decades, and he's one of the most influential of his generation. And he's great in this. I think he's fantastic as William King Hale. He is the man behind the Osage murders, but he's also pretty damn despicable in terms of things that he does in this movie. You also have Jesse Plemons as Thomas Bruce White, Tattooed Cardinal as Lizzie Q, John Lithgow was great. Brendan Fraser, a lot of people's giving him crap for the way his performance is portrayed here, but I think he's good in this as well. Also, there's some other strong performances here from Native Americans, also people in this catalog. So there's some very great talent in here. But if we have to talk about the most valuable player in this, the most valuable player of this entire movie is the one that everyone has been talking up even before this movie come out, and that is, of course, the lovely Lily Gladstone. She commits to this movie. She is fantastic, and she's fucking amazing in this movie. She is a true scene stealer here, and in my opinion, she's the front runner for Best Actress at the Oscars next year. She is not only great in terms of being so likable and being entirely shocked at what's going on with her people, and she has to convey a lot of heavy emotions for her character here, and she is playing this character. She's impressive. This is the first time I've seen her. I know she's done other things, but after this, I want to see more of what she's going to do, because she has to deliver some heartbreaking moments. There is one moment in between in this movie that is so heartbreaking, where she's just crying and she's just fearful because she trusted this man that she loved, but at the same time she can't help but feel betrayed because of what this man has done. And Mollie's presence is definitely the heartbeat of this epic, gargantuan, heavily drawed film, even if she's not in it as much. And even when she's not in this movie in the last half of this, she is felt. Her presence is felt throughout this film. But if she should be nominated for an Academy Award next year, I think it's rightfully deserved, because she's having to play so much into this, and she does a great job in terms of what she does. And I want to see more of what Gladstone has to offer in her filmography before this and after this. So easily she's great, and I have to give her a lot of credibility. And easily, before I say this, I just want to take a minute to admire her beauty and her presence and her effort that she gives by describing how I feel about her acting, and should she be seen in more stuff with these two clips when it comes to this movie. So let's do that.
Yes, definitely.
Great.
Absolutely. I think it's signed, sealed, and delivered, honey.
Yeah.
Going into the mix aspect side of things is the structure of the story. This is a very well edited film by Thelma Shoemaker, which I do have to give credit for, and it is well edited. Other technical aspects as far as the cinematography and the music I just praised, but it's the way this movie is edited and the way the story is portrayed here. I like the way the story is portrayed and the themes that they are going on with, because this movie does have some very good themes, and especially when it comes to the book about greed and corruption. What will people do for money and such? And it is a study of a West bounded by the vertical geometry of oil rigs and the violent conspiracies of powerful men. And there's a lot of heavy themes that are inside of them. So when it comes to the themes of this movie, when you're having to see these innocent Native American people in 1926 having to be drugged or killed and such, while it takes an emotional detox out of you, which I am going to get to in my negatives, you can't help but admire the fact that this is some heavy tragedy stuff, and it did fine here. And when it comes to that, it does a very good job at what it set out to do when it comes to it. So, but my issue when it comes to the confliction side of the pace and the story is I feel like while I was just praising Mollie and the performance, I would have liked this if you would just had Mollie be more front and center, have it told from her point of view, as well as the other Native Americans' point of view. So I definitely do feel that way in terms of what you're doing and what this movie does play with. So anything, I give credit to the way you did the pacing, but I feel like there's an alternative way you could have done this. But obviously, let's go into my issues with this, because I don't think this is a 5 out of 5. I don't think this is Scorsese's masterpiece, because he's done better. Obviously, I'll say the two biggest issues first, and a few small ones. First is that because of the heavy, intense, and harsh, grim subject matter of these Native Americans getting killed left and right for almost the entire movie until the last couple minutes, it's very hard for me to see myself ever going back and rewatching this because of the subject matter being so heavily devastating. And I get it, that's the point you're supposed to make. It's not supposed to be all sunshine and rainbows in terms of this situation, but when you're having to see Native Americans be drugged and poisoned or killed over and over for a good portion of this, you end up feeling a certain way to like, will something satisfying just happen? Will something happen to where there is a sense of hope? Now, you do get the sense of hope in the last couple minutes, so it's pretty much like Schindler's List, where that movie isn't that very rewatchable either. But when you get to the sense of hope and the relief that someone's gonna help people like Native Americans, when Mollie goes turn to the police and she gets justice for what's going on, it becomes satisfying. But as I said, it takes a long time to get there, okay? Also, there's not much likable characters in terms of the first two leads in De Niro and DiCaprio because of a lot of despicable and dark and evil things that they do in here. I get it, that was the time period. I get it, that's the book probably. I've never read the book, but I honestly really felt like that this was kind of overstaying its welcome, to where you don't have that much to root for except for Mollie and her people to want to get out of the situation, to get justice. And for a movie like this that doesn't have that many likable characters, it takes an emotional toll on you. So you definitely do have to have a lot of freaking strengths into that said mindset. So obviously that is another one of the biggest issues when it comes to this, and it does make it even more frustrating to rewatch because there's not a lot of likable characters in this. Also, there are some more actors here I wanted to see more of, and there are some moments where they will speak in the Osage language and there's not a lot of subtitles there, and I wish that could have been rectified. But easily my biggest issue and my biggest gripe when it comes to this movie, I have said this multiple times before, I'll say it again, I am not against a movie that's gonna do this sort of thing. This did not need to be 3 hours and 27 minutes. Honestly, this did not feel like a movie that justifies its 3 hours and 26-minute long runtime here. I've gone on long enough on my social medias about this, and I said what I had to say about that, and I stick to it. And don't get me wrong, as I said it multiple times, I don't mind a shorter movie. I don't mind a movie that's willing to go long-winded, especially for the story that you need to tell. But with a movie like this, when you're just having a lot of doom and gloom in the first two halves of the movie, and when you're watching Native Americans being killed and poisoned, it makes it very difficult for me to sit through this. There was moments where I was tempting to just freaking walk away from this. There were moments where I was borderline getting irritated with this runtime. And as I said before, I do not have a problem with a long movie. Some of my favorite movies of all time are long, like The Lord of the Rings, or even some of the Harry Potter movies, or recently Across the Spider-Verse. That was 2 hours and 20 minutes. Is minutes shorter than this. But the biggest issue here is because of the fact that you're seeing all this emotional trauma with Mollie. I feel like you desperately could have put an intermission into this, and Scorsese has taken issue with that because, and the editor, and this is why you're gonna have a lot of people say bring intermissions back, because they freaking should be brought back. What is the point of having a 3-hour movie like this and not put a place in between? Because there is a good spot in the middle where you could just have an intermission here. And a lot of people has said you can bitch about a 3-hour long movie, but you can sit through a TV show. That's the easiest comparison you make that I'm kind of getting exhausted with. And that comparison is because we're home. I can pause a TV show or a longer movie. I can go get snacks. I can go get a drink. I can get up and go to the bathroom. And while I'm not saying that it doesn't make use of its runtime, I just feel like there is a version of this where if you had an intermission or just cut a few moments out of this movie, you could have easily made this a little bit shorter and a little bit easier for me to get through, because when you're having to sit through all of this doom and gloom, it takes an emotional toll on you. And I'm not the only person who's going to feel this way. A lot of other people has. And I can also see a lot of indigenuous and a lot of Native Americans walk out and be disgusted or even get angry on social media because of the harsh subject matter. Even people who are not Native Americans, who are like myself, who is autistic or who has conditions, they will even also be freaking sensitive to this subject matter. So it's a win-win, no-win situation. In conclusion, at the end of the day, this is a very good movie. It would be one of my favorite movies of the year. While this is a movie I definitely agree on a lot of pros in terms of direction, in terms of acting, cinematography, and the production design, and a lot of incredible things here. And while I stand by my criticisms, especially the running time without so much as an intermission here, I'm glad Scorsese got to make the movie he wanted to make. I'm glad this is a story that got to be told. And I'm glad this is a story that people got to see, theatrical or streaming. But this is also one of those movies of Martin Scorsese, just like Silence, that I will only have the patience to sit through his movie once. And I probably will never watch it again. But at the end of the day, I'm glad I saw it. I am saddened that this movie did not do well. It was supposed to, because this was at least supposed to make 500, 600 million. But when you have subject matter like this, it's very hard for people to sit through a 3+ hour movie like this. Therefore, you're a victim of your own demise. But I do feel like whether it is still in theaters in some of your areas, or when this comes to streaming, or when this comes to Blu-ray, pick this up, give it a watch. But just be prepared for an intermission that you probably will have to make of your own. And be prepared for a lot of emotionally devastating sequences. So again, not a movie I'm going to rewatch again, but I'm glad I watched it. And for that, I will go ahead and give this movie an Epictastic. If you're a Scorsese fan or a cinema fan, check it out. I enjoyed this movie despite a lot of issues I have when it comes to the lack of likable characters and the runtime not having an intermission. Well, that's going to do it for the video that you just watched. If you want to see more, my channel icon is up here. If you want to see more content from me, All my social medias are right here in this end card. I will also leave a playlist and a video here for you to see what the channel is about. As always, acknowledge me, stay epictastic, join the Epictasticness, and you guys keep it cool.